The cornfields of Nebraska stretched endlessly under the pale morning sky. 19-year-old Emma Carter wiped the grease off her hands and adjusted the strap of her worn denim overalls. Around her, the old barn groaned in the wind, half workshop, half dream. The faint smell of engine oil and hay hung in the air. For 2 years, Emma had been building something no one in her small farming town believed in. A homemade rocket. Not a model toy, but a real, functional, fuel-powered rocket crafted from scrap metal, tractor parts, and an old propane tank. Her classmates had laughed. Her teachers said she was bright but unrealistic. And when she applied to Caltech and MIT, both letters came back the same. We regret to inform you. That night, Emma sat on the barn floor, tears mixing with the soot on her face. Guess a farm girl's place isn't the stars, she whispered to the darkness, but failure didn't sit right with her spirit. She grew up fixing broken harvesters, welding in the cold, calculating measurements with chalk on the barn walls. The rejection hurt, but it didn't break her. The following weeks, Emma disappeared into her project. She scavenged old car engines from junkyards and borrowed chemical manuals from the town library. When people came to visit, all they saw was smoke, sparks, and a girl who refused to quit. Her father, Bill Carter, watched from a distance, heart heavy but proud. "You can't teach what she's got," he said to a neighbor. "That fire inside her, that's God's own gift." One morning, after months of failures, something changed. The wind was still, the sky clear, and Emma stood before her creation, a 7-foot-tall rocket patched with aluminum, painted white and blue. She called it Hope 1. With trembling hands, she connected the fuel line, stepped back and pressed the ignition. The roar that followed sent birds flying from the trees. Flames burst beneath the rocket, dust swirled, and for a moment the ground itself seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a sputtering cough, the rocket lifted. Not high, maybe 50 feet, but enough to cast its shadow over the farm before falling softly into the field. Emma screamed in triumph. She had done it. It actually flew. The video of her rocket launch wasn't meant for the world to see. Her younger brother Eli had recorded it on his phone and uploaded it to YouTube with the caption, "My sister built a rocket out of junk. Watch this." Within a week it had 10 million views. Scientists, engineers, and journalists flooded her inbox. People called her the farm girl rocket scientist. But one email stood out. It had the NASA logo. At first, Emma thought it was a prank. But when a black SUV pulled into the dusty driveway a few days later, she realized it was real. 2 representatives from NASA stepped out, wearing crisp suits and warm smiles. "Miss Carter," one said, offering his hand. "We'd like to talk about your rocket." Emma froze, wrench in hand, staring at them as if they'd stepped out of a dream. They invited her to the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland. For the first time in her life, Emma boarded a plane, staring out the window as clouds passed beneath her. When she arrived, her heart raced at the sight of real rockets towering into the sky. A team of engineers guided her to a presentation room where her video played on a large screen. One senior engineer, Dr. Maria Reynolds, turned to her and said, "You did this without funding, without lab equipment, and without formal training." Emma nodded nervously. "Just what I had in the barn." The room fell silent. Then Maria smiled. "That's the kind of mind we need. Not just smart, but fearless." They offered her a research apprenticeship starting immediately. Emma could barely speak. "I didn't even get into college," she whispered. Maria replied gently, "Sometimes the universe rejects you from one place so you can take off from another." Months later, Emma stood in a NASA lab, gloves on, name tag gleaming, Emma Carter. Junior propulsion technician. She wasn't just fixing old engines now. She was designing fuel systems for next-generation rockets. Every click of her keyboard, every blueprint she drew, felt like a prayer answered. Her first paycheck went to fixing the roof of her family's barn, the same place where hope still stood proudly on display. When a reporter asked her what she'd say to the colleges that rejected her, Emma smiled. "I'd thank them," she said, "because if they hadn't said no, I'd never have built my own yes." Months later, during a NASA test, her mentor leaned over and said, "You know, Carter, the world's still watching that video. You inspired a lot of girls out there." Emma looked out the window, where a real rocket stood ready for launch. She thought of the cornfields, her father's old tools, the endless nights spent dreaming of stars. As the engines ignited and the countdown began, she whispered to herself, "This one's for the farm girl who never stopped believing."